Okay, I'll set that.
Okay. This meeting is being videotaped. And I'll make a motion to accept the minutes from November 7th. Great. We have a very short agenda tonight. Mr. Burrell here. You can go first if you'd like, and we're just gonna ask if you could limit it to 10 minutes so that we can get through
Okay.
our other things that we have
Okay.
tonight.
It might maybe take 15 minutes, but I'll, go as quick as I can. That's why I wanted to distribute as much stuff as possible, so I appreciate it. So first of all, thank you for allowing me to be on the agenda. The other person with me is Charlene Farris, Brimfield Road. She's actually the abutter to the property that we're here to talk about. So what it is I had emailed a formal written complaint to Andrew back on November 6, 2017. And what it's about is about the Lois Fidgel gravel pit, Brimfield Road. And the issue that so what it was is I had attended the September 18th planning board meeting, which was a renewal application or annual procedure for the Lois Fidgel gravel pit. What it was is their agenda was called to order at the Shepherd Building, and then they were having gravel site visits. So Charlene, so I had actually gone to the planning board when they opened the meeting at 2 p.m. and I videotaped the meeting, and I recorded that myself and Charlene Farris were interested in lodging a complaint and addressing that complaint for the Lois Fidgel gravel pit. So we got permission from the planning board that we would meet there at 4:30 p.m., which was the time on the agenda of that. So we were there. We showed up. Charlene will explain about her complaint, and I will explain about the environmental concern that I have. So what it was is that gravel pit over the past several years, and those are the pictures that are there, date back to 2014, 2015. There's no pictures from 16 and some from 17. So what it was is it's a gravel pit that has a permit for a gravel pit. It does not have any town permit, any federal, state, or town authorization to be a shooting range. The Farrises have been dealing with complaints against towards the police department against noise, and she will address that. What concerns me and Charlene is going to the town's assessor's maps show that the Fidgel gravel pit, and this is what I discussed with Andrew, is what's in what's called the Groundwater Protection Overlay District. So Andrew, is Andrew here? I'm sorry. Oh, you're Andrew. Okay. So so what I was trying to do was to make the West Warren Water District, which your property, as you can see in the assessor's maps, is the next property over from the Fidgel gravel pit. So the concerns that we have is one is this operation that we attempted to complain to the Warren Planning Board about, and it was confirmed to me by Rebecca Aceria that the planning board has been aware and has known that this has been a shooting range for the past several years. And as you can see from the pictures of what Charlene will discuss and what I was upset is there were some junk cars that were put in this gravel pit, and they were shot up by obviously firearms. It was then asked of the landowner and of the planning board, as well as some additional people, whether when those cars were brought there 1, 2, or 3 years ago, were they emptied of oil or any hazardous materials, fluids. And nobody from the town, nobody wants to answer any questions. Charlene actually called the DEP and complained. They tried to contact the landowner. There was apparently no communications there. They did contact the Warren Planning Board after that September 18th meeting, and they notified the Board of Health. Board of Health inspector went out that following Friday from the 18th, and I actually talked to the Board of Health, and they said, and I requested to them at a public meeting, which I videotaped, but I don't need to present that evidence, but I videotaped that meeting, and I told them, when your inspector goes out, this is what Charlene and I want. We want the inspector to go out and take pictures of the cars that were shot up as they were on the property. We wanted pictures of any leaking fluids or anything from these cars. We wanted also them to document pictures of the construction trailer that has been shot up there, shell casings on the ground, any type of environmental or, not damage, but any type of environmental concern that anyone would have. It is my understanding that the inspector went out. I don't know how long the inspector was there from the Board of Health. The inspector left. I did not, the Board of Health did not get back to me any answer at all as to anything. So Stanley Soltis, a resident from town, attended the next Board of Health meeting and asked him, which unfortunately I wasn't able to make the meeting and video record it, but asked them saying, did the inspector go out? They said yes. And Stanley said, where's all the pictures? Where's this, where's that? And they said, oh, she went out, looked at it, came back, and then that was it. So Stanley asked him, says, well, where's the report from the Board of Health inspector? They said that she did not document a report, she did not take any pictures, and she didn't. And then the Board of Health refused to answer the questions to Stanley whether the cars were still there or not. So my complaint that I discussed with Andrew is right now I see a complaint, or my concern to this district is your property is right next door. It was well known that the Warren Planning Board knew there was illegal operations of a shooting range that could or potentially or possibly contaminate any ground, water, soil, whatever. The planning board has admitted to me that there was never a permit for any type of operation other than it's supposed to be a gravel pit. And they also confirmed to me at the meeting that if any other type of operation inside that gravel pit was going to be an operation, that needed a special permit to be inside the gravel pit, and that was not issued. So I then asked Rebecca or Sarah the simple question saying, okay, well, you're admitting all this stuff to me. The planning board has been there every year to inspect it. The junk cars were there last year in 2016 when you inspected the property. And I asked, where is the documentation when you went out for this gravel pit inspection, when your job is to make sure that the gravel pit conforms to the bylaws, there's no hazardous materials, there's nothing that's bad to the environment. And they said, oh, well, they said the inspection went fine. So in other words, so what I'm telling this board is the planning board did not even document that there was any illegal activity going on. They didn't document that the cars were there shot up, leaking any fluids. They didn't document anything over the past 2 or 3 years. And that was my concern that I addressed with Andrew. So I just can't fathom, and I'm sure other residents of Warren would think the same. So if you know that there's some type of activity that could possibly contaminate anything, and your property is right next door, why would you be grossly negligent, in my opinion, and do that type of operation? Now personally, from my point of view, I don't quite understand what the groundwater protection overlay district means or is. Other than that, to me, that if you were doing some type of activity on your property, because it's in a protection district, you would not want to do something, to me, that would be stupid or not a bright idea to do something with the water supply right next door. So what also transpired that I sent you a public email on is Charlene and I were there and we understood the rights of the property owner, the Fidgel family, that if they didn't want us to go on the property while they were doing the inspection, that was fine. And I have it on video that the chairman agreed that we would meet on the side of the road. Charlene and I had a problem with Mr. John Fidgel, and I ended up videotaping, because it was a public meeting with a public agenda in accordance with the state laws. Charlene and I ended up getting assaulted by Mr. John Fidgel, and these are some pictures of the video shot here of Mr. Fidgel coming at me and his wife Carrie, holding him back. So I was verbally assaulted, and then we had issues while we were in my car with Charlene in my passenger seat where she was assaulting Charlene and swinging her hands at my car. So that's, the reason why I'm explaining this is because I have documented an assault that happened at a public meeting, and I'm not dwelling on that component, but what I couldn't understand is the following planning board meeting that I attended, which was October 2nd. It was on the agenda to discuss the gravel site pit visits. So I just sat there and I waited for the Warren Planning Board on October 2 to discuss the gravel site visit, and I videotaped that meeting, and the planning board brought up the John Vigil site visit, and I was waiting for them to say something about the assault, about Charlene never got to talk to anybody because she couldn't get out of my car. The board members never came over and talked to her about a complaint so she never even got to address the complaint. All that Chairman Ramsey then said was, well, I didn't see any problems, let's renew the permit, and I raised my hand, and I says, excuse me, he says, didn't see any problems, I asked him right on my video, I says, where are the pictures that I asked you on video to provide of the cars and of any fluids in the ground? And he said on videotape, well, we didn't do that. And I said, well, you were on video 2 hours before you went there that you promised me to do that. And he agreed, and he just didn't care. They didn't document anything. I then asked him, did you document the problem that I had with John Vigil? And his answer was, that's not my problem, I'm not documenting any assault. He says, that's between you and John Vigil. I then asked him on video, what about Charlene's complaint? And he goes, well, we're sorry, she didn't get out of the car, so we didn't hear her complaint. So, to me, those are the rude actions of the planning board, acknowledging that there's a problem with this property and just putting on the blinders and looking the other way and refusing to do anything. So I then consulted a municipal lawyer and filed a open meeting law complaint against the planning board for the 2 meetings, nothing to do with the assault, but regarding other matters. And I got the replies back that the board has no comment and refuses to have any discussion of any violations or wants to talk about anything with those 2 days. So I think at this point, I just want to express, kind of an introduction to this. I guess what I'll do is I'll allow, and then the other thing too is I did want to, I meant to turn these over. So these are Facebook messages between your husband, Bob,
Yes.
between her husband, Robert, and John Vigil dating back to 1/26/14, asking about the shooting in the sand pit. And he acknowledges that he allowed the Warren Police Department to use his gravel pit as a shooting range. And then when asked, well, when the Farrises complained about the noise and everything else, John Vigil says, well, why don't you buy my property or something to that effect. So I will turn this over because this is, So what I'll do is I'll allow her to speak. She's going to discuss about the noise and, because she's a witness and she's the abutter to that, so I wanted to allow her to, share her.
All I wanna say is,
Yes, yeah.
Permits and all that is not our jurisdiction.
Right, I understand.
The only thing we are concerned about is supplying potable water to our residents.
Correct.
So is your complaint, or that you're letting us know that these cars could have had fluids in them so that we can investigate further?
Correct,
Yes.
right.
Okay.
And then the other thing, I don't mean to step on you, but I think you wanted the DEP to come out and go on the property but I think the understanding
They
is.
told me they couldn't, they had to go through the planning board and then through the Board of Health.
Correct, right. So
I put in a call to the DEP today and I did not hear back from her.
So basically, what I'm trying to describe to this board is not myself and Charlene being railroaded, but everybody is being railroaded by the planning board and the Board of Health. Stanley has asked several times for all the documentations, any public records that they have regarding that site visit, and apparently nothing has come up. The only thing that I did ask Ramsey to address, that the planning board refuses to even answer this question, and I don't mind turning these over, This was the site visit on 9/18/2017. If you notice, there's no gate. There's no gate on the public roadway outside of the the Fidgel gravel pit. Now that has been in violation for the past 4 years of the town bylaws. It's supposed to be a locked gate. After the visit, Charlene told me, what, 2 days? 2 days after? 2 days after the Warren Planning Board goes there, they tell me in a public meeting there's no violations, but John Fidgel magically installs a gate there. And so nobody has still explained to me from the town of Warren who instructed Mr. John Fidgel saying, oh, you've been in violation of the bylaws, you should put a gate there, and the gate magically showed up. And there's no records anywhere in the town records that John Fidgel was told to put a gate there. So I don't think that John Fidgel just put a gate there because he wanted the gate there. It's because the town told him, you're in violation, you need to put a gate there, but the town has no records of any violations, nor even telling him to put a gate there. So at this point, and I apologize, I'll let Charlene go on, so. Okay,
My
so go ahead.
concern calling the DEP were the cars up there. We could actually hear them hitting them with bullets. You could hear the metal. You could hear the glass shattering. I have 2 children that were scared to death to even go in our backyard because they're shooting. One's 9, one's 17. 3 summers these children haven't been able to enjoy the pool. But the idea of the cars and nobody looking into it to test that ground to see if there was anything in there, not only could have affected your water supply. I have a well. I'm very concerned about my children drinking the water. I have found bullet casings all over my property. We have no weapons. All that is going into the ground. That's not fair to me. It's not fair to my husband. It's not fair to my kids. And I have addressed it with the police department about people being up there as late as Sunday. But I found out where they're coming. Now, I don't know the road next to Figel's, where the gate is, and the pumping station. The dirt road in between, is that for the water? Is that the water department?
The one on the left of Figel's driveway.
Okay, you're in between. There's cars going in and out of there.
Well, it's gated down to the wells, it's locked, so
Okay,
they can only
well-
go so far.
That's where they're going in. They were shooting Sunday afternoon.
Well, they can't drive a car from going down to the pump station. They can't, unless they walk over there, that's the
Okay.
only way.
Well, this little truck went in there and disappeared into the trees. And a short time later, there was shooting. We couldn't see anybody from our property, but they were shooting down there. So maybe a gate near the road would be better.
So do you have anything else to?
No,
Anything-
my concern is that there was no report on that soil, whether there was anything leaking into the ground. I don't know where the vein for our well runs. I don't know. I know when they built the group home next door, it did affect our well. So I'm just saying, with all this going on up there, if there's fluids leaking from these vehicles,
Have
Are
you had
those-
your well tested?
they tested it last year. But I think that's before the cars were in that spot. I don't know.
Well, we test our water regularly, we haven't had any problems.
No problems. Well, like I said, I'm concerned about that.
Our wells are tested regularly.
Then I will contact the DEP and have them come in and check again. But that was the major concern, of fluids leaking all over.
Mm-hmm.
And the only thing I have to, just to add again, is again, there's documentation in these pictures that these cars were there at least more than a year, at least we know that.
Well, at least this year.
At least this year and maybe last year. So the only other thing, that, I don't remember, oh no, it was Stanley, okay. So Stanley Soltis actually, so it turns out, so I couldn't even get any information from the planning board or anybody else from the municipal building. So Stanley ended up finding out from the Board of Health, from the inspector woman, that came out at the meeting after, is that the cars were removed. And so Stanley then asked, saying, well, who ordered the cars removed? And the Board of Health says, well, we don't know, but Fidgel just went and picked them up and moved them. Stanley asked, what day were they moved? No idea.
Which that
And
would
it-
be his right to remove them
Right,
because they are
right,
his,
Right,
that is
right,
his
and I certainly
property.
understand that, right. So in other words, so Stanley was just trying to get information in the same way that I'm trying to get information out of the planning board, saying, well, you know there's violations, you know there's problems, you know there's this, but then where is the documentation? And that's what disturbs me the most with, right now, the Board of Health and the Warren Planning Board, you know, that I described to Andrew, saying, I have no issue if there was a problem, but when it's missing from the town's paperwork, and you put on the blinders, and the cars magically, they claim they don't exist, when there's pictures that they were there, you know, that's totally inexcusable to anybody who lives in this town. You know, whether you're resident, whatever, I just, and that is my, I guess my pet peeve, is I just don't understand how that this was done publicly. I videoed everything, you know, because Charlene is upset, you know. But on the other side of the coin too, she's calling the police department to complain about the shooting, and it's already in the town's records that this is a Warren Police shooting range, and it's nothing against the police department, but it's in John Fidgel's admission that this is a Warren Police shooting range. And again, the planning board says there were no permits issued for anything, and it was told to me, well, if it's supposed to be a shooting range, or John Fidgel wants to use a shooting range, yes, then there should be a permit for a John Fidgel to have a shooting range inside the gravel permit, because the gravel permit is for gravel only and nothing in between. And, you know, and this goes back to the source, is, I don't mean to stress this 15 times, but I videotaped and I went to the planning board and the Board of Health and asked them to document all the stuff, to follow their procedures, and as of right now, they have not followed any procedures at all, which makes me really upset. In a way, you know, that I don't know what's going on, I don't know why they didn't document anything, but, you know, if for some reason that something happens in the future and they get sued, well, it's their own fault for not documenting and magically pretending that nothing exists, so.
Okay, what, this groundwater protection overlay, no, we're trying to protect the water that's in that area. Now, if there's a trailer up there, it was a trailer home, they're shooting holes in this. Now, all that insulation's in the ground?
No, it wouldn't.
I mean, they've got holes in this trailer. What else is in that trailer that we don't know about? We don't go on the property, and that's what I've asked to be checked, to make sure that this isn't going to affect our water.
I don't know what would be in a trailer that could leak into the ground.
That's what we don't know.
So I guess in close, so I appreciate your time, and, you know, I don't know if I went over the 10-minute time, but I appreciate you listening to what we have to say and, you know, addressing her complaints, and, you know, this is just not me complaining. She's the abutter, she's the one that, I'm just helping her out because I'm, you know, good with records and maps and stuff like that, and so, but, you know, she's the one that has to deal with this, and then what I'm dealing with is the other side of the coin, is what happened to the other two departments that didn't follow procedure and mysteriously, you know, they re-grant the permit and say there's no violations, when obviously this is all videotaped. So I guess the other thing I have in closing is does this board have any jurisdiction to contact the owner of the land, or to talk to DEP, or to schedule a meeting with the Board of Health, or talk to the planning board, or anything to that effect?
Well, like I said,
In other words, to share information, in other words.
We don't have any jurisdiction over the permits and
Okay,
everything that
right,
we
which
talked
I
about,
understand
but I
that
think
component.
as a board, if we agree and we can take a vote, we could try to follow up with John Fidgel to see if he would give us a letter stating that the cars were drained of fluids, etc.,
Mhm.
when they were placed on the property. We can follow up with the planning board and the Board of Health
Mhm.
to see if they can or have contacted DEP to do any type of soil testing. But like Andy said, our wells are tested,
Right, no, I certainly,
regularly, so
I
if
certainly
anything
understand
showed
that,
up,
and I
we would know.
Yeah, exactly.
and as far as your well, if you're concerned, I would suggest getting that tested. We don't have any jurisdiction over private wells, only the public water supply. So that's, and I don't know if you have any other ideas of what we can do to follow up to.
I think the main goal was to make sure that we understood your concerns and gone on record with them so that we could take the time to, take those concerns under advisement and figure out the best course for our board to take, which I would assume would include those measures that you mentioned. And, we need to figure out what others we may or may not want to, or be able to take, based on our own jurisdiction.
We
They
can
did
also
test-
follow up with the
They
police.
tested my well when they were testing from the Reed Street.
Mhm.
My well was one of them that was
Mhm.
tested. But that was the last time it was tested. That's
That
before
was,
there's
that
cars
was
and
last
everything.
winter, I believe,
Yeah.
we tested those wells.
Yeah.
We can also follow up with the chief of police about the bullet casings, but
Right. And that-
bullet casings are enclosed, so I don't believe there's anything that can seep into the ground from them
Yeah.
that would harm our water
Yeah.
supply.
But, and I mean, but I mean, that's just one of the simple answers that I was asking with those two boards is okay, when Stanley found out that the cars were removed, like, okay, well, when you remove the cars and that's the thing is, we don't know, only the planning board knows when they went in to walk in for the inspection, what was on that ground at that point in time. We don't know if there were 0 casings on the ground, maybe there were 10 casings, maybe there were 1,000, I don't know.
That's our complaint,
But-
that it
but
wasn't
that-
tested.
But that was our complaint, is we wanted the planning board, while they were there live, to hear our two complaints before they went in to inspect. Instead, they went in and inspected and came back out and they report, we didn't see anything. Well, the cars were obviously, and then when you went and looked at them, but you didn't document anything. And they agreed to take pictures and they didn't. So, and that wasn't just the pictures for us, that's if there was contamination, then the pictures are town property or whatever that could be shared with you. That would then provide you with information, and that wasn't done either. And I don't have an answer for that, and they haven't answered my question, so.
Okay. Well, like Dina said, we'll take
Yeah,
everything
absolutely.
under
And I appreciate
advisement
your
and we'll
time.
follow up with the people that we can and, as soon as we have everything in order, we can get back to you with,
Yeah.
can we just get your address?
I wrote it on the.
Oh, you wrote it on the side, that's right, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so give us some time to
Yeah.
get in contact.
In the meantime, I'll get a hold of the DEP and see if they did get anything from the board.
Okay,
Because they were supposed to report back to her at the DEP, and I never heard anything.
okay. And we'll also follow up with the Board of Health to see.
It's a concern when you have a group home next door and, and you have a well with this kind of stuff going on, it's,
Just one last question. Do you mind just explaining, just so Charlene, because I haven't explained it to Charlene, because she hasn't seen it, but could you just explain briefly what the groundwater protection overlay district is and what it means?
I do not know off the top of my head,
okay,
but we
okay.
could get the definition,
Oh, okay,
from the DEP.
okay.
Yeah,
do you know what it is, Dave?
Yeah, but it's different over here a little bit. It's like a 500-foot radius around your wellheads.
Oh,
There's 3 different zones.
yeah, we can get the definition, but I don't know
Oh,
off the top of
okay.
my head.
Oh, okay. All right, thank you.
That's 1, 2, 3, there's 3 different zones.
Okay,
Okay.
Great,
All right, I guess-
thank you.
you're welcome.
Yeah, I guess I'm all set, so I
You're welcome.
appreciate your time as
Okay,
well, and I
thank you.
appreciate the opportunity for you to, hear our concerns. So again, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, we'll find out what we
Okay. All right, so this time I'll shut off the camera, and I
Okay.
guess we're all set, so, thanks again.
Okay, minutes, we did.